that I early on in my studies realized that black holes are not just absorbing material, but they're radiating material, because actually our own solar system is moving away from an immense black hole at the center of the galaxy. And if we wound the time backwards, we'd get back into the black hole, right? So we're actually moving away from it, and what happens is that because the structure of the space-time manifold of a black hole is a double torus, and that's why the galaxy is in a double torus structure with an equator, which is where all the matter can get stuck in between the two toruses. Well, as we're moving out of this huge vorticular arm, the solar system is going below and back above and below and back above and below, and we are at this time crossing the equator of our galaxy. And I figured this out. It was just recently confirmed by papers that were published at Oxford. And they noticed as well that every time we crossed the equator in the past, there was cataclysmic effects. And so, you know, I figured it out because if you look at the Milky Way in the night sky, it's almost in the middle, and the Milky Way is the equator of our galaxy. That's why it's so dense. And so what happens is when you're at the equator, there's more debris, there's more dust, there's more radiation coming from the galactic black hole because a manifold of space-time is pinched there, particles are accelerated, it's called galactic cosmic rays, and that has an effect on our sun. And our sun has been in this last cycle. So now the long count Mayan calendar, the short count, was mapping the 11-year cycle of the sun, and it was extremely precise. The long count is mapping the longer cycle, which is the sun going across the equator of the galaxy. And so it's not 2012 as a date, it's 2012 region, right? So we're in it right now. So there's been an increase of activity on the sun, then all of a sudden an abrupt decrease, the sun got really, really cold, and now we're starting to get, because we're passing from one torus to the other. When we enter the new torus, it's going to be really dense there again, and now we're going to get a lot of activity again. And that activity creates a lot of heat in our solar system, and because we're polluting, now all the planets are heating up, but because we're polluting, then that heat on our planet gets even more trapped. And so it's a combination, compounding each other, that's producing this meltdown on our planet. But this is crucial to our evolution. This is how beautiful the organization of the vacuum is. This is perfectly coordinated so that we would be just at the right moment in our consciousness evolution, so that we would need that little kick in the butt at this exact time to force a society to go galactic, right? And that's where we're going. Because if we don't go galactic now, we're just not going to make it. We're not. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the structure of the vacuum that you talk about, discovering this relationship of the cube octahedron or vector equilibrium and the star tetrahedron, I'm very, very interested in trying to understand that, which is why I actually made a model of it, which people can look at themselves in the back of the room. But I'd like to know if you could talk a little bit about what it actually is, like what form, like what is it made of? If it's vacuum, it's made of nothing. I understand it conceptually as a conceptual structure, but I'd like to elaborate a little bit more beyond your concept.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, you know, you can imagine this. Okay. We think that there's something with nothing, but in fact, when we look in the universe, we find nowhere with nothing. right? Everything we think is nothing is something, meaning even if you look at the densest or the lowest vacuum we can find, which is intergalactic vacuum, the space between galaxies, right?
Or the space between a neutron, between the electrons and the protons.
Right, we find there's fluctuations there, and we find that between galaxies there's still a particle every few centimeters, right? And so the fact is that there's fluctuations all the time, everywhere. Now imagine the surface of the ocean, okay? And imagine that the surface of the ocean, you know how it's chaotic like that? It's mostly chaotic. But then there's region where there's vortices, right? Where it's highly organized in that region of space. Now the vacuum, where it's really organized in that region of space, where that happens, you call it an atom. It's a little vortex in the structure of space. You see what I'm saying? And then if you looked at all the vortex put together, they all interact with each other, and they make that tapestry, which is the structure of the vacuum, the geometry of the vacuum, the interaction between all the vortices. You see it now?
But it's happening also below atomic level.
Right, it's happening, it's like little vortices and big vortices all embedded in each other, so it's a little bit more complicated. It's like, you can imagine like little pinches in space-time at all different scales, all embedded into each other, and if you saw it all together, you would see that structure, that tapestry of space-time. Right? It's like all the rings interacting, triangulating, they're going to make tetrahedrons. That's the only way they can organize in the most efficient and in the most equilibrium way. So they're going to reduce to that fundamental geometry. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what happened to us is that we thought that the vortex is the whole thing, and we missed the water that makes the vortex. Right? It's like the vacuum is the pool of water, and we see a vortex in it, we see a little eddy in it, we go, oh, there's something over there, and we don't know that it's the water, it's the space itself that produces that little effect. And that's what we're discovering. Go ahead.
But what you're saying is this isn't just some metaphysical exercise where you're saying consciousness is a source of life.
Right.
Real.
Right. Well, when you say consciousness is a source of life, that's all great and philosophical, but what the heck is consciousness, right?
Well, that's the point.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Now I can write the math to what is consciousness. Consciousness is self-awareness. Self-awareness means that there's a feedback. So through the information moving through the electromagnetic field and coming back through the gravitational field, you have consciousness, self-awareness. So I actually can write the mechanics of the math of why the universe is conscious. And so that's what is needed, because saying consciousness is fundamental to the universe doesn't tell you anything if you don't know what are the mechanics that produce that. Go ahead.
My question is, everything I've read about the Big Bang, everything's expanding at the universally constant rate. Where is the contraction then?
Where is the contraction?
Right.
It's occurring at the exact same time, right? Think of the Big Bang as a torus, right? As the double torus. We're at the equator moving away, so we think everything is expanding. If we were at the poles moving back in, we'd think everything is contracting. You see? But because it's so huge, we don't get any clue. We see that there's stuff that's blue shifted over there, and it's confusing us, and there's stuff that seems to be moving at faster than the speed of light, and it's confusing us even more. And that is because we're starting this new mapping of the background radiation, in which they said, oh my God, it's not uniform. And when they tried to map it out, they said, oh, it looks like a torus. They're starting to realize the universe is a huge torus.
Embedded embedded toruses.
Embedded toruses.
So if you're I see you as a real human being, but in reality, capital R,
Right.
you are my perception of a human being. Your embedded toruses, you're really actually a black hole embedded continuously, so you are virtually no thing. Your
Yes.
field of pure potential, you are a vacuum.
Yeah, I am the manifestation of the vacuum when the vacuum is coherent. The vacuum is incoherent over here, so you don't see it, but where it's coherent, then you see it.
And my eyes and my senses are designed to perceive in this particular framework your coherent reality.
That's right.
But in dimensionlessness, or in all dimension then,
Right.
your particular focal point or your positionality
Right.
relative to what you're seeing only applies to three-dimensionality and not other dimensions.
Well, wait. When you start talking about dimensions, we're
Yes.
going to have issues.
Okay.
Because if you say dimensions to a physicist,
Yes.
he's thinking another Cartesian plane. When you say
Right.
dimensions to a spiritual person, he's thinking a whole world of things going on, right? And that's what
Well,
the confusion is.
okay.
So let's agree on dimensions. Okay, from what you saw tonight that I showed you,
Yes.
dimensions in that definition then is a different scale. That's all it is, right? Another dimension is a different scale. Dimensions are not parallel to each other, they're concentric to each other. So, for instance, if you were an atom and you experience the universe as an atom at that scale, you'd see it in a certain way. Now, if I grew you to a human being, all of a sudden you would experience the universe completely differently, and you could think, I've changed dimension. But you haven't. All you've done is change scale, literally change dimension.
Okay.
Right? So that's really, really crucial.
Okay. So I agree with you, and
Okay.
that's physical reality.
Right.
That's physical reality. But now, if we talk about like everything on an ideational note, like your idea to me is another reality. In other words, it's another dimension, and it doesn't have scale, and it doesn't have all of these
No, it does. It does.
An
because
idea does.
Yeah, all your ideas do. They're scale bounded. They're scale related because your ideas, what you're downloading, what you're expressing,
Yes.
is the information that's in the vacuum in the morphogenic field in which you are. Meaning that, like, you're experiencing the world, and that's giving you ideas, and then you express those ideas, modifying the world, which is giving you new ideas again, and all that. So you are bounded by this scale. And that's why we have a coordinated relationship. I like to think of it this way. All of our heads are diverging, making us individuals.
Yes.
But all of our feet are converging to the same center. It's held by the same gravitational field, which means that it holds a very specific center, a very specific set of information, which is all the information of all the things on the planet, all experiencing it from their very particular sets of information, which is a combination of all the sets of information of all their cells experiencing the universe from their center, which again is the combination of all the information of all the atoms that makes one particular cell experiencing the universe from their center, and so on and so on and so on and so on. You see what I'm saying? And so dimensions is a scale relationship. Information is a scale relationship. Time is a scale. Time is concentric and scalar. And so that's why it's not so obvious to us, because we think of it in linear terms. But in fact, it's concentric, it's spherical embeddedness.
All right, so like when you're talking about these black holes,
Okay, I can't keep going because I got to take more questions. We'll have to discuss this. Go ahead.
If time's scaled,
Yeah.
did the Big Bang, is there a beginning?
That's a good question.
And if there was the beginning point of the Big Bang, I was always wondering what was around that point just before it happened.
Okay, well, that's the thing. This was one of the hardest moments in my research. It was when I realized that based on what I was writing, based on the concept, based on the math, I would come to have, at one point, I would have to come to conclude that, and I had to let go of this human concept that there's some kind of beginning and that there's going to be some kind of end, because that's a linear concept. But actually, that it is only cycles from infinitely big to infinitely small. And all I need to understand is those cycles. All I need to understand and let go of the beginning and the end concept, because we never, ever, ever, ever have seen anything begin or end. Nothing. Not one single thing. And when I say that, people say, yeah, well, you know, I know I'm going to die. Well, okay, show me something in that event that disappears. I can count every single one of the atoms that you've ever been made of, and you're shedding billions of atoms every second, right? Because the cell divisions, you're dividing cells at the rate at a million cells a second. Each cell is made of billions of atoms. So you're shedding atoms like there's no tomorrow. Like you got this trail of stuff following you. And, you know, and I can count all the atoms you were made, you know, when you so-called died. They didn't disappear, right? They just desorganized from one set of organization into another scale, the Earth, right? And then they're going to get reorganized again, and desorganized, and reorganized. So all we're seeing is cycles. We have seen nothing die. You see big you know, titles in astrophysical journal, the death of a star. We like to be so dramatic, right? And because they see a star explode, a supernova. But the truth is when the dust settles, what do they see where their star was? They see a pulsar or a black hole, right? Because they changed the name of it, they say it's dead. No, it's changed form, but it's still alive, right? It's just gone through a cycle. So it's like, you know, all we see is cycles. And so there's no beginning and no end. And at first, when you try to experience that in your body, it's like, oh my God, it's like you're gonna die. It's like if you let go of a beginning and an end, it's like you're gonna die. But if you actually let it go, all of a sudden it's like a liberation, and you start to feel the flow of nature that you're in.